Everyone thought Marcus was the perfect husband. Expensive gifts, romantic gestures, social media perfection. But while his wife admired her new diamond ring, I was sitting across from them in that restaurant, holding something far more valuable. The USB drive containing every dirty secret that would destroy their fairy tale forever. Before we dive into this story that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about perfect relationships, smash that like button if you're ready for a tale of deception, betrayal, and ultimate karma. Trust me, you'll want to share this one. 15 years. That's how long I've been a private investigator, and I thought I'd seen every kind of lie a person could tell. But Marcus Wellington? He was in a league of his own. When his business partner David Chan walked into my office 3 months ago, I expected another routine case about missing funds or creative accounting. What I discovered was so much worse than stolen money. David was nervous, fidgeting with his wedding ring as he explained how numbers weren't adding up at their tech consulting firm. "Something's off," he kept saying. "Marcus has been secretive lately, making decisions without me, accessing accounts I don't have permission for." The retainer check he slid across my desk was generous enough to get my attention, but it was the genuine worry in his voice that made me take the case. My first glimpse of Marcus was at his office building downtown. Tall, perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. He had this way of commanding a room, making everyone around him feel smaller while he smiled that practiced smile. But I've learned to look beyond the surface, and something about his eyes bothered me. They were calculating, always watching, always measuring what people could give him. Then I saw Sarah. God, she was beautiful. But more than that, she had this genuine warmth that seemed to light up every space she entered. I watched her surprise Marcus at his office one afternoon, bringing him lunch she'd made herself. The way she looked at him, complete adoration, total trust. It made my stomach turn because I was already starting to piece together who Marcus really was. The anniversary dinner was supposed to be my breakthrough moment. I'd been following him for weeks, documenting his movements, his meetings, his habits. But when I saw them walk into Le Bernardin, Sarah glowing in an emerald dress that brought out her eyes, Marcus playing the devoted husband for everyone to see, I knew I was witnessing something bigger than embezzlement. This was a performance, and Sarah was the unwitting star. I'd reserved a table 3 rows back, positioned perfectly to observe without being noticed. The diamond ring came out during dessert, and the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Sarah's tears, the applause from nearby tables, Marcus basking in the attention. It would have been touching if I hadn't already seen what was hidden behind that perfect façade. While everyone watched her admire that sparkling symbol of their love, I was holding something that would shatter her world completely. Following the money was supposed to be simple. Bank records, credit card statements, business transactions, the usual paper trail that reveals where someone's priorities really lie. But Marcus had been busy. Over 2 years, he'd systematically moved nearly $400,000 from the company into personal accounts I wasn't supposed to find. He'd gotten sloppy toward the end, probably because he thought he was untouchable. The gambling was what surprised me first. Not casual weekend poker or the occasional sports bet, but serious organized gambling that had him traveling to underground games in Atlantic City and Las Vegas. The kind of gambling that attracts dangerous people with very specific ideas about debt collection. I found receipts, wire transfers, even threatening messages from people who weren't interested in Marcus's excuses about needing more time. But it was the encrypted files on his laptop that changed everything. I'd gotten access during what looked like a routine security consultation at his office, one of the benefits of having contacts in corporate IT. What I found made me question whether I should involve the police immediately or gather more evidence first. Photos, messages, recorded phone calls that painted a picture of a man who saw people as objects to be manipulated and used. The affairs weren't just casual relationships. Marcus had constructed elaborate lies for 3 different women, each believing she was his secret love, each being strung along with promises of leaving Sarah once the time was right. The messages I found were calculated and cruel, designed to extract money, gifts, and absolute devotion from women who thought they'd found their soulmate. One of them, Jennifer, had already given him $30,000 for what she believed was their future home together. What broke my heart was watching Sarah's social media during this time. Happy couple photos at charity galas, romantic weekend getaways that Marcus was probably funding with stolen money, posts about how blessed she felt to have found her perfect partner. The comments from her friends were full of envy and admiration. Relationship goals, they wrote. You're so lucky, Sarah. If only they knew. The break into their home office happened on a Thursday night when I knew they'd be at Sarah's sister's birthday dinner across town. Marcus was predictable in his habits, and Sarah always posted their dinner plans on Instagram with precise timing. Their house was a monument to Marcus's stolen success. Marble countertops, imported fixtures, artwork that cost more than most people's annual salary. But it was his home office that told the real story. Inside his supposedly secure filing cabinet, I found everything. Bank statements showing the embezzled funds, documentation of his gambling debts, even evidence of insurance fraud from a car accident he'd staged the previous year. But the USB drive hidden behind his college diploma contained something that made me physically sick. Photos and videos of Sarah, taken without her knowledge, including intimate moments when she'd obviously been drugged or manipulated. The timestamps corresponded with text messages to his affairs, where he bragged about how easy Sarah was to control. That's when I realized this wasn't just about money or infidelity. Marcus was systematically drugging his wife to make her more compliant, then documenting it like some kind of trophy collection. The prescription bottle I found in his desk drawer was filled with Rohypnol roofies. He was literally poisoning the woman who loved him most in the world, turning her into a victim in her own home. I sat in that office for 20 minutes, staring at evidence that would destroy multiple lives but needed to be exposed. This went far beyond my original assignment. Sarah wasn't just married to a thief and a cheater. She was living with someone who was systematically abusing her in ways she didn't even realize. The moral weight of what I knew felt crushing, but I also knew I was probably the only person in a position to save her. The restaurant stakeout wasn't coincidence. It was calculated precision. I'd been tracking Marcus's patterns for months, and anniversary dinners were part of his annual performance. He needed witnesses for his grand gestures, needed the validation of strangers watching him play the perfect husband. Le Bernardin was his favorite stage, and I was going to make sure this performance was his last. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. Copies of everything, bank records, photographs, recorded conversations, evidence of the drugging, were already in the hands of David Chun, Sarah's divorce attorney friend Michelle, and Detective Rivera at the NYPD's Financial Crimes Unit. I wasn't taking any chances with Marcus trying to destroy evidence or manipulate his way out of consequences. But timing was everything. Too early, and Marcus might have time to run. Too late, and Sarah might suffer more abuse. I needed him vulnerable, confident, surrounded by people who would witness his downfall. The anniversary dinner was perfect because it was public, documented, and would create maximum impact when the truth came out. Sarah had been showing signs that something was wrong, even if she couldn't identify what. I'd watched her over the past month, noticing how she sometimes seemed confused about events she couldn't remember clearly, how she'd started asking Marcus questions about money and his business trips. Her intuition was fighting against the drugs and manipulation, and I could see her beginning to trust those instincts. Marcus, meanwhile, was getting paranoid. He'd started looking over his shoulder more often, checking his phone obsessively, even hiring a security firm to sweep his office for surveillance equipment. He knew someone was watching, but he couldn't figure out who or why. The stress was making him careless, which was exactly what I needed. The business partner pressure was mounting too. David had been asking more direct questions about the missing funds, demanding access to accounts Marcus had locked him out of. An external audit was scheduled for the following week, and Marcus knew his embezzlement would be discovered. He was running out of time and options, which made him desperate and unpredictable. My final preparations felt like preparing for war. Every piece of evidence was documented and secured in multiple locations. I'd even arranged for Jennifer, one of his affair partners, to receive a package of evidence on the same day everything else went public. She deserved to know the truth about the man who'd stolen her money and manipulated her emotions. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While Marcus was publicly celebrating his perfect marriage with an expensive diamond ring, the walls were already closing in around him. Police were preparing arrest warrants. Lawyers were filing fraud charges. His business partners were freezing accounts. And Sarah was about to discover that the man she trusted with her life had been systematically betraying and abusing her for years. As I sat in that restaurant watching Marcus perform his role as the devoted husband one last time, I felt a mixture of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because justice was finally coming for someone who'd hurt so many people. Sadness because Sarah's world was about to be completely destroyed, even though it would ultimately save her life. The diamond ring sparkled under the restaurant's lights, catching the attention of everyone around them. But I knew that by tomorrow, that ring would be evidence in a criminal case, and Marcus would be discovering what it feels like to have all your secrets exposed at once. He'd built his perfect life on lies, manipulation, and stolen money. Now it was time to pay the price. The phone call started at 6 a.m. the next morning. First, it was Detective Rivera confirming that Marcus had been arrested at their home while Sarah was still in her nightgown, confused and terrified. Then David Chun called, his voice shaking as he told me about the FBI agents who'd shown up at their office with search warrants and frozen all the company accounts. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. Sarah's discovery of the truth was heartbreaking to witness, even from a distance. Michelle, her attorney friend, had received my package of evidence and immediately drove to the police station to be with Sarah when she learned about the drugging, the affairs, and the stolen money that had funded their entire lifestyle. The woman I'd watched glowing with happiness just 12 hours earlier was now discovering that her entire marriage had been built on systematic abuse and deception. But there was something powerful in watching Sarah's awakening too. As the fog of manipulation and drugs cleared from her mind, I could see her remembering things that hadn't made sense before. Missing time, confusion, feelings of being watched and controlled that she'd attributed to anxiety. The relief of finally understanding what had been happening to her was almost as strong as the devastation of learning the truth. Marcus's downfall was swift and complete. The embezzlement charges alone would have been serious, but the drugging allegations and evidence of systematic abuse turned him into a pariah overnight. His golf club membership was revoked. His country club banned him from the premises. Former friends crossed the street to avoid him. The man who'd built his identity on social status and admiration found himself completely isolated. The legal consequences came in waves. Federal charges for embezzlement and wire fraud, state charges for assault and unlawful drugging, civil lawsuits from his business partners and the women he'd defrauded. His lawyers, the expensive ones he'd hired with stolen money, quickly realized this case was unwinnable and started negotiating plea deals just to minimize the prison time. The minimum sentence he was facing was 12 years in federal prison. Jennifer and the other affair partners had their own reckonings to face. Finding out that the man they'd loved and trusted was not only married but had stolen money from them was devastating. Jennifer's $30,000 was gone forever, spent on gambling debts and luxury items to impress other women. But at least they were free from his manipulation and could start rebuilding their lives with the truth. The business collapse happened almost overnight. Once the news broke about Marcus's embezzlement, clients started canceling contracts and demanding refunds. David Chun, who'd built the company alongside Marcus for over a decade, lost everything through no fault of his own. It was one of the collateral damages that weighed heavily on my conscience, even though exposing the truth had been necessary. Sarah's transformation in the weeks following Marcus's arrest was remarkable. The woman who'd seemed almost ethereal in her trust and naivety was revealing herself to be incredibly strong and determined. She filed for divorce immediately, obtained a restraining order, and started working with financial investigators to recover whatever assets could be salvaged. The drugging had been going on for so long that she was still discovering memories and experiences that were finally making sense. 3 months later, I attended Marcus's sentencing hearing. He'd aged years in just a few months. The perfect hair was gone, replaced by prison gray. The expensive suits traded for an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller and more pathetic than I'd ever seen him. When the judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison, I felt a deep satisfaction that justice had finally been served. Sarah was there too, sitting in the back of the courtroom with Michelle and her sister. She looked different, stronger, more present, more herself than I'd ever seen her during all my months of surveillance. When Marcus turned to look at her one last time before being led away, she met his eyes with a steady gaze that held no forgiveness, no lingering affection, just the clear-eyed recognition of who he really was. After the hearing, I found myself walking beside Sarah in the courthouse hallway. She recognized me somehow, maybe from the restaurant, maybe from some investigative instinct she was only now learning to trust. "You're the one who saved me," she said simply. I wanted to tell her she'd saved herself by being strong enough to handle the truth. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply witness someone's courage without diminishing it with words. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Not from Sarah. She was taking time to heal and rediscover who she was outside of Marcus's manipulation. The invitation was from Jennifer, one of Marcus's former affair partners. She'd met someone genuine, someone honest, and she wanted me to know that discovering the truth about Marcus, as devastating as it had been, had ultimately set her free to find real love. I framed that invitation and hung it in my office, not because I planned to attend, but because it represented something important. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't a diamond ring or expensive gifts or grand romantic gestures. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is the truth, even when it hurts, even when it destroys everything they thought they knew about their life. Marcus is still in federal prison, serving his sentence in a facility that doesn't allow conjugal visits or luxury accommodations. His perfect hair has gone completely gray, and from what I hear through my contacts in the system, he spends most of his time in the prison library, probably plotting his next scheme or writing appeals that will never be successful. The man who once controlled every aspect of his image and environment now can't even choose what he eats for breakfast. Sarah has rebuilt her life completely. She moved across the country, started a nonprofit organization that helps victims of domestic abuse recognize the signs of manipulation and drugging. She speaks at conferences now, sharing her story to help other women understand that abuse doesn't always look like physical violence. Sometimes it looks like a diamond ring bought with stolen money, and a husband who seems too good to be true. As for me, this case changed how I approach every investigation. I used to think my job was simply to find facts and present evidence. Now I understand that sometimes you're not just investigating a crime. You're uncovering the difference between someone's public performance and their private truth. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is make sure the right people have access to that truth, regardless of how much it might hurt in the short term. The USB drive that started this whole story is now locked away in an evidence locker somewhere, part of Marcus's permanent criminal record. But the information it contained, the proof of who he really was behind all the expensive gifts and romantic gestures, that information set multiple people free from a man who saw them as objects to be manipulated and used. That's the thing about secrets. They only have power as long as they stay hidden. Once they're exposed to light, once the people being hurt by them have access to the truth, those secrets become something else entirely. They become evidence. They become justice. They become the foundation for rebuilding a life based on honesty instead of manipulation. Marcus thought he could buy love and loyalty with diamonds and lies. But in the end, the most valuable thing wasn't the ring he put on Sarah's finger. It was the truth that set her free from him forever. If this story taught you anything, it's that the shiniest surface often hides the darkest secrets. Sarah's diamond cost more than money. It nearly cost her everything. But sometimes the truth is the most valuable gift someone can receive. What do you think? Was I right to expose Marcus, or should I have minded my own business? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about justice served and karma delivered, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.